We're going to go to one of the really fascinating aspects of this program, and that is a one-on-one conversation. I am so pleased to have this opportunity. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce Rajiv Nagaich, who is an elder law attorney. And in the spirit of full disclosure, Rajiv was kind enough to spend some time with me over the telephone so that we could make this as insightful and as encompassing a discussion as we possibly could. There are a lot of accomplishments here and a lot of services that Rajiv has participated in. He said, Jeff, just skip all that. Let's get into our conversation. It's in the program and you'll pick it up from there. So Rajiv, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. You know, the reason why I came here is I was excited to meet this guy, Jeff Renner, the weather guy. So it's
well, thank you very much.
So nice to be here. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Rajiv. Rajiv, I think the first question is just to sort of orient us, and you get a better sense, I think, of the needs, the policy problems, etc. If we have a sense of what really drew you into this particular specialty of elder law, can you give us a little sense of what the background was that led you into that?
Oh, sure. You know, besides, of course, me being 149 years of age, so age discrimination is not going to let me get a job elsewhere. This is an interesting and a very personal journey to me. So most of us in this audience, I think through my accent, through the looks that I wear on my face and other places, you can tell I was born in Waco, Texas, right? So my journey starts from, just like it does for most first-generation foreigners who come to America. I jump on my flying carpet, say I want to go to America. Why? Because the streets of America are paved to go. I land here, I meet my wife, who's from Spokane, Washington. And through her, I meet my in-laws, and that is my introduction to the aging process in America. To my in-laws, Jeff, they're quintessential middle-class Americans. Right? They built their life around this crazy notion that if we work hard all our lives, if we pay off the house by the time we retire, if we have a few $100,000 in the bank, then surely by the time we retire, Social Security, Medicare, our savings, our debt-free lifestyle will see us through. And they were going to do the American highways and the byways in the RV. The problem was the RV never left the house because Bill got diagnosed with Alzheimer's the last year of his work life. Vivian, who was a nurse, she said to herself, well, I'll see to it that my husband never has to go to a nursing home. And for 67 years, she tried to keep him at home. And when he started wandering, then she reached out to the doctors, the person of last resort, and said, you know, I need some help. What do I do? And the doctor looked at Vivian and said, look, you're a nurse, Vivian. There's no answer to what Bill has. Bill belongs in a nursing home. So he ends up in the nursing home. The first time that I see Bill was when he was in the nursing home. And my journey to this was through Jamie. I had proposed to her. She had said yes, and I couldn't believe my lucky stars. Say, here's a white chick, say yes to this boy from India. Hooray, you know. So we went down to Spokane to see her side of the family, stayed with her mom on Friday, met her sisters, Mrs. Nephews on Saturday, and then Sunday on the way back, she says, I want to stop and say hi to my dad. And mind you, at this time, I'm not a lawyer. I'm working for Allstate insurance companies. I certainly didn't come to America to be a lawyer. I came to America to find my gold, right? So I was working for Allstate insurance companies at that time, and my wife was insured by Allstate, wrecked her car, and the good hands had just come apart at that time. And her file was sitting on my desk to make her a happy client. So my introduction was, she asked me, and in one of these phone conversations, where are you from? I said, from India. She said, oh, I thought so. My sister-in-law is from India. So that's how this personal conversation started. And so we settled the claim. I asked her to marry me. She said, yes. Oh, yeah. And then we went to see her side of the family. So on the way on Sunday, when she says, I want to stop and say hi to my dad. Now, mind you, by now I know he has Alzheimer's. And I have some idea what Alzheimer's is, not really a whole lot. And I know that he was living in a nursing home. And I promise you, I didn't have a concept of what a place called a nursing home is. And there's some of us, looks like from the either East India or Pakistan, some of the places, but some of us not born here. This resonates with us, is because you don't build nursing homes in places where we come from. And so we went to spend 2 hours in this nursing home. It was a very uncomfortable conversation, right? I mean, Bill had lost his speech by now. He recognizes his daughter, busts out in the biggest of grins. And we had this very awkward 2-hour interaction with this man who couldn't speak. And clearly my wife was so in love with him. And so there we are, after 2 hours, trying to say goodbye and walk out of the place. And there is Bill hanging on to Jamie, thinking that she was there to take him home. And she was just bored. And we were standing at one of those exits where you have the keypad, where we could enter the key code and get out. And then there's some worker noticed this commotion near the door, comes running up and taps Bill on the shoulder long enough so he could be distracted, so we could enter the key code and walk out. And for the first time in America, I walk away from that place saying to myself, and how does the richest country in the entire world take care of their own people when they can no longer care for themselves? But the reason why you ask that question is because in the so-called third world that I come from, I see all 4 of my grandparents take their last breath sleeping in the same pillow they've always slept on, invariably always surrounded by their loved ones. That's an expectation, and an expectation that comes true almost every single time. And this is what we call the first world. So that's a short journey, and we looked for lawyers at that time. I went out looking for lawyers, and this is why, and a big part of seeking help is knowing who is the right lawyer for you. And most of us will not make a distinction between elder law and estate planning. We're just thinking that anyone who goes to law school doesn't buy the degree in a Kmart blue light special should be able to help us out. And so I went to this guy who happened to be a part-time judge in the SeaTac Municipal Court in private practice with his son and daughter, a guy called Paul Cott in Burien, Washington. And I told him my story. I said, here's my father-in-law, and he's in the nursing home. We were trying to bring him actually back home to what we were doing. And by the time this whole saga was going on, I was looking for lawyers, they had lost their house, they had lost all their money, trying to take care of Bill at home. And Vivian was told that she needed to look into Medicaid. And like the average person in America, she said, what the heck, isn't that a welfare program? No, you need this program now. And so by the time Bill, we moved him from Eastern Washington to Western Washington, he was in Medicaid, and our government was paying $5,500 each month to keep him in this nursing home. And I was trying to find a way, after Jamie and I were married, I was trying to find a way to bring my father-in-law back, coming down to the house. My mother-in-law had moved in with us, very Indian way of doing things, right? And her, of course, she was saying, no, I can't do that, I don't want to be a burden on you. And I'm saying, what burden are you talking about? I grew up in a house with 16 of us. You don't have enough in your family to make it a party for me, right? So she hemmed and hawed for a good long time, and she finally moved in with us, and Bill was in this nursing home, and we were trying to find a way to bring him back home. And when you're looking at the stuff, well, how does that work? The government is paying $5,500 each month to keep him in this nursing home. And we had figured out that with a little bit of help in the morning, in the evening, between Jamie, Vivian, and me, we could bring him actually back home. And it would cost the government half the amount of money to accomplish that goal. So let's go to Medicaid. Tell them we want to save you money. And the answer that comes back is, no. The program Mr. Wallace is on allows him to access Medicaid in a nursing home setting. You can take him home. You'd have to pay privately. So this then starts dawning on you. How does this crazy system work? Right? I mean, we are willing to put Bill in a situation where he'd much rather not be, even though he has a family that's going to be willing to take care of him. And the worst thing is, the society pays twice the amount of money for him to be where he'd much rather not be. And so that's my introduction to then Paul Todd. Help me, how does this work? And Paul says, Raj, I know what Medicaid is. I don't know how to get Medicaid to bring your dad back home. Now that's a short journey from me being with Allstate to making a decision to go back to law school and then graduating in 2002 and seeing my father-in-law take his last breath, sadly, in the nursing home the day I take my last final exam. Vivian lived with us another 6 years after the fact death. Vivian died of kidney cancer that had metastasized to her bones. And when I look back at her life, for about 6-7 months of her life, she was incontinent, unambulatory, unable to care for herself. All the reasons why we say to people, you should no longer be living at home. And here's a poster child of an individual, no doubt in my mind that if I had not known how to work with this system, here's a poster child individual who would have spent somewhere between 6 months to something longer in some nursing home somewhere. And Vivian gets to take her last breath, sleeping in the same pillow she'd always slept on, surrounded by her loved ones. And the kicker to Vivian's story was not that she could stay at home. I mean, that, as far as I'm concerned, should be the norm. The kicker to Vivian's story was not for a single solitary day did we look to the government or to Medicaid or to Medicare to help us in any way, shape, or form. So the message that I keep bringing is, in America, you ask me, so how did I become an elder law attorney? Well, that's how I became the elder law attorney. But this is such an evolving field, and the epiphany that comes to me is this. Most of us in this room, by the way, if you are aging, raise your hand if you're aging in this room. Most of us who are aging in this room will be doing a lot of planning getting ready for aging. And when we do the planning, we will have doctors, we will sign up for Medicare, we'll sign up for supplemental insurance plans, we'll visit doctors to keep up with their health care, we will go see financial planners, and we'll go see lawyers. And that's what Bill had done. He had all of these things. And my question always is this. It's not the lack of planning. Pray tell me this. This year, in 2016, 2.6 million Americans will take their last breath. Over 3/4 of them will take their last breath, not in their own home, in a nursing home, convalescent home, assisted living facility somewhere other than their own home. How does that happen? The poorest countries in the world, people expect to die at home, and almost everyone actually manages to die at home. How does that happen? And it's not about money. It's how we pull together our planning. And the amazing thing is this. Everyone is busy helping clients get ready for retirement. Financial planners do their stuff. Lawyers do their stuff. Doctors do their stuff. But yet, when somebody has Alzheimer's, somebody has a stroke, they fall down, they can't go back home. It's no longer a medical issue. Then all of a sudden, this whole chain of events happens, which is one medical illness will become a housing issue because in America, older people not safe at home must surely belong in institutional care. That's our protocol. And as soon as it becomes a housing issue, it becomes a financial issue, because majority of us are going to say, you know, I could afford $3,000 to $4,000 a month, but when the costs are going to be $10, $12, $15, $18, $20,000 a month, the average person is not going to be able to cope with that. Now it's a financial issue. And if you get lucky, somebody will say, go see Mr. Craig Coombs out there. Craig, raise your hand up there. I want to recognize you. Here's one of the better elder law attorneys in your community on the east side. And that's if you're lucky, somebody will say, go see Craig Coombs. And now it will become a legal issue, despite the fact that you and I spent a lot of time trying to pull together wills, farms, attorneys, trust, all the legal documents. And no, none of those documents are going to work. You now need a new set of documents. How does this work? This is craziness at its zenith, unless you are willing to look at this issue differently.
And that brings up a couple of questions. First of all, I should say, if anybody in here is not aging, I'd like you to raise your hand, and we'd like to bring you up here for next year. So I don't see any hands going up just yet. You've not only had the experience, Rajiv, with your family, but now with many, many, many clients. You've alluded that it's not simply an issue of money, but that's involved. If money is not the sole issue, if it's an element of planning and it's an element of preparation and contacting the right people, what are your recommendations there? What's the best way to address this?
I think the best way to address this issue is to recognize that at the end of the day, we have to take charge of aging and not just look to outside professionals to tell us what planning we need to do to go ahead and age properly. And let me give you an example. It's a complicated question. Here's the way I take a look at it. Look, we all know that in retirement or while we are living, we are going to need access to health care. And oftentimes when I'm giving lectures or doing seminars, and I'll ask clients to say, look, the way we get ready for health care in retirement is you buy a Medicare insurance plan, you buy a supplement plan, and that is the average person's way of saying that, okay, I have done everything from a planning perspective to get ready for retirement. I have the insurance. I can see doctors, I can see doctors, I can go to the hospital, get medications. But now you have a stroke sitting at home one day. You call 911, EMTs come crashing in and say, glad you called, you're having a stroke, and they take you down to the hospital. How many of you would feel confident in saying Medicare will pay off at this point of time? Raise your hands. And isn't that a damn shame? Isn't that a damn shame? Thanks to Medicare, your and my life will be saved because America is so good at taking care of people after the illness happens. Think about where did people go from Ebola. When they had Ebola, they didn't want to go to Europe or Cuba or India. They wanted to come to either Texas or Maryland because these are the central places, the place where your life could be saved if there's any time to be done. But we can't raise the hand because we know there's something wrong with our healthcare system. And what's wrong with the healthcare system is not that we don't know how to save people's lives after they have an illness. What's wrong with our system is, despite the fact we spend the highest per capita expense on taking care of healthcare needs, our population doesn't live as long as people do in Japan and in England and other countries. I don't know about England, but other European countries where they spend half or a fraction of what we are spending. That's what's wrong with our system. We don't focus on preventative care. We are damn good at taking care of people after the stroke or the heart attack. We are lousy at making sure that people don't have a heart attack or stroke to begin with. And when I look at the planning perspective, Jeff, here's what I say. You just retired, right? So I'm going to put you on the spot here.
I didn't sign up for this. No, go ahead.
What are your retirement objectives?
Retirement objectives would be to continue to contribute
Right.
to the community, to society.
Right.
And when I actually feel retired, I'll probably surprise myself. All these people come forth, and it's a matter of, now that you've got all this extra time. But I think number one is to continue to have a sense that you're contributing and to be able to direct what direction you want to go, that ability to still have, as we said earlier, some options.
Right. And so be relevant.
Right.
We want to be relevant all the way to the end. Here's what I'll say. If you really parse this down, if you really sit back and think about it and say, what could be the most important goals I want to accomplish in retirement? Relevance would be one of them, but not the top. You look at all the research that comes from people who are retired and say, what are your biggest fears in retirement? The average person in America will say this. The biggest fear I have in retirement is I'll end up in a nursing home. The second biggest fear is I'll become a burden on other people. The third biggest fear is I will run out of money while I'm living. Those are the biggest fears. Now ask yourself this. How many of us go into the planning communities and say that my planning objective, Mr. Lawyer, is not for you to pull together documents that will help me when I'm dead? A will, when does that come into being? When I'm dead. A power of attorney, when does that end up? When I'm dead. A living will, when does that get used? When I'm about to be dead. The lawyers, we do amazing work. Law schools teach us everything. Who gets what when I die? How do I want to die? Who's going to manage my stuff till I die? It's about dying. Who's talking about living? When was the last time we went to a lawyer and said, Mr. Lawyer, in everything that you're going to help me do, you can do the die planning, that's okay, but also help me make sure that you can embed in my planning a system where there is predictability that my children, who I name as my agents, will know how to use my money to keep me at home, because my biggest fear is going to a nursing home. Your average power of attorney, think about this for a second, and we'll take a gander up here. Hopefully, I won't take too much time, but I want this gander to be there because you need to visualize this. The average person who prepares a legal document called a power of attorney does it for one purpose, that now that I have this power of attorney, I am not going to be as much of a burden on my children. They will be empowered legally to be able to act on my behalf. And my conclusion is the average person's power of attorney is a guarantee that when you fall ill, you will be a burden on someone. And the sad part is you named that person whom you're going to be a burden on. Why do I say that? Here's why I say that. Dad falls down, breaks his hip, ends up in the rehab center. The doctor comes in after a couple of days and says to Dad, well, you know, you're healing pretty well, and I got to ask you to leave this hospital. I got 27 other people who need this bed right now, but I can't release you home. You can't go back home. Where do you think Dad's going to end up? Not a nursing home, no. A rehab center. Now, what's another word for rehab center? Nursing home. But no one will look at this as a nursing home. Why? Because this is continuity of care. Occupational speech, physical therapy, designed to get you better, so you end up in the rehab center. The moment you walk into the rehab center, dad says to himself, oh my God, this is not where I want to spend the rest of my days here. I will do everything they're going to ask me to do. I want to be out of this joint no later than by Friday. So he does everything they ask him to do. What are they going to ask him to do? Eat, right, exercise, socialize, something we all know we should be doing, but very few of us get to do it. So he does everything for a week, thinking, okay, Friday I'm here. 4 o'clock comes, 5 o'clock comes, all the nurses start leaving, and the poor schmuck, he's still stuck there. Well, that's a bummer. Next week comes and goes, he's still stuck there. On Saturday, the child that you gave the power of attorney to, that child shows up and says, oh, hi, Dad, how are you? What do you think Dad's answer is right now? Don't you dare hi me. Did you bring the pickup truck? Now this becomes a housing issue. Despite the fact the average person is thinking, I want to live my life out as long as I can in my own home, this is a housing issue because there's some reason I can't go back home. And for the average person, this is where this organization comes in. The average person can't go back home because they have no one at home who can deliberately be available to take care of them. And for some of you, you're living in this absolutely fabulous dream home, 4 stories tall, overlooking the lake. Wonderful as long as you can walk up and down, but now that you've got a broken hip, you can't even get past the front door of that house. So you can't go back home. This is not a housing issue for the person who's ill. This is a housing nightmare for every single one we said we don't want to become a burden on. But so far, so good financially because Medicare covers the bill. Maybe up to 100 days. Maybe if you're making progress. And you were thinking, okay, well, if 100 days is about 3 months, I think I should be out of here in less than 3 months, except the 3rd, 5th, 8th, 10th, 15th, 18th, 20th. Some random day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, always. A nurse walks into the room and says, oh, Mr. Nagaich, you've stopped making progress, and Medicare says they're going to stop paying for your bill starting Monday. Really? So what happened to my 100 days? It's up to 100 days. So what are my choices? Well, you can stay here and you can pay privately. How much will I pay? Oh, $15,000 to $18,000 if you're getting rehab. And this becomes a financial issue. And your child is the one who has to deal with this one. The power of attorney basically said to him, you go figure this out. Nowhere in the power of attorney did we say, figure this out. And what do we want the children to figure out? Help me, bring me back home.
So part of that figuring it out, there's the question of what can families do, what can an individual do. This has inherent in it some questions in terms of policies that need to be changed, could be changed, state, local, national level. Just very briefly, could you give us an overview? If you had a shopping list of maybe 3 different items that need to be changed, what would those be?
The first thing that needs to change is this is not a government issue and this is an individual societal issue. We have to quit looking to the government to come up with the laws and the programs. Aging is inherently an individual and a family issue. We have to start understanding and having a clear picture. What do we want our life to look like? Who will be involved in that part? And what could go wrong? And what role will they play? And then we plan according to that stuff. From a policy perspective, if you take a look at, for those of you who are working for the city government and the state governments, funding is absolutely necessary. I mean, this is without funding, it's not going to happen. What we see in public policy, funding is getting cut day by day by day. Less money for a growing need. And unless you and I are going to quit looking to the government to come up with the answers, we will be sorely disappointed in the answers we're going to be given by the government. So I think the first step is we need to educate ourselves about this issue better than what we are doing right now. And then second, go and put some pressure on your legislators that they need to fund these activities. The bottom line, it's about money. Make no mistake about it. It is about money. You don't have the money, don't put the funding there, it won't happen.
So you led us into a very, I think, topic of interest, and that is we have people that have taken time out of their day to come here. Many are either facing those very needs sooner or later, or can anticipate that in their own lives. What is one thing that they could do today, and as they walk forth from this place, that could help alleviate this problem in a very practical way?
Boy, that's a loaded question, Jeff. You should have given me heads up on that one.
You didn't tell me you were going to ask me about what I was going to do now that I'm retired. So.
I think the one thing that I'd say is we have to understand that our system of planning in America is so fragmented and so broken that despite the fact that every professional truly and earnestly wants to go and help you, what we engage in is silo planning. Doctors are there to help you after illness happens. Financial planners, their goal, as far as I'm concerned, is to make sure you have the biggest bank account the day that you die. Lawyers, estate planning attorneys, and many of you, I think, would be attorneys, and please don't take offense to this, but law schools teach us to deal with death issues, not living issues. Everyone is busy doing their job right, but yet when a guy falls down, fails, then he is the one who has to deal with what Bill had to deal with. Run out of money, go to the nursing home, become a burden, no matter how much you say you don't want to be. What can the one thing you can do? You can educate yourself. You need to start embarking on a journey somewhere about mid-50s, no later than that one day I want to retire, hopefully at 110 years of age. And when I retire, I want to be independent. I still want to have some money in my bank, and I don't want to be a burden on my kids. And when you start doing that, you need to understand there's a common thread that runs between all the planning. Healthcare should be about preventative healthcare, not just reactive healthcare. Housing should be, by the time you're 75, you should be living in the last house you're going to occupy on earth, one that you're confident that if you fall down, you'll still be able to access the care up here. Financially, you need to make sure. Money by itself doesn't do anything. $87 million didn't help Casey Kasem live his life in his own home. It's not money. It is what assurance do you have that your money will be used to take care of you the way you want to. And then legally, you need to go ahead and do some different. You need to see an elder law attorney. If you're looking at retirement planning, you need to see an elder law attorney, not an estate planning attorney, not an estate planning attorney who says, I do elder law because I have, most of my clients are elderly. You need to see an elder law attorney. And if you do that, I think that's a good first step in that direction.
You were talking about the importance of family to intervene and work as a support system. That is optimal. In many cases, we're a very mobile society. People have moved around the United States. How does an organization like ESAT Friends of Seniors offer an opportunity to address that? And what might you say to everyone here with respect to what supporting an organization like that could do to solve the problem?
I think that the one opportunity that I see for organizations like EFS, when a parent says, I don't want to be a burden on my children, Jeff, I think what we are saying is I don't want you ever to feel that you have to become my caregiver. But we don't say that in the powers of attorney. We just say, go figure this out. And most children are thinking, I have to do it all. You don't. EFS and these organizations are the ones that can step in and educate the people out there that when the time comes that you're no longer able to drive yourself, instead of the child getting in the car and driving you, call EFS and we'll try and see if we can arrange it. But it can't just be an empty expectation. And that's the big thing that I'll drive, hopefully, is that it's about money in the end. The demand is so huge, EFS simply could not exist unless until people will say that, yeah, we are going to go ahead and contribute to this one, because some person has to get in the car, organize the volunteers, get in the car, go take somebody, take them places. That's the only way we can say to our children, I don't want to be a burden, because I have a plan in place where somebody else will do it. You, the child, just see to it that it is done. Nancy Reagan, Ronald Reagan formula. Nancy Reagan never told Ronald Reagan that, honey, you need to get out of bed, let me give you a shower. That's the reason why he lived at home. And Sandra Day O'Connor, who resigned the Supreme Court bench, went back to Arizona to take care of her husband, saw her husband go to institutional care within 1 year. They had all sorts of money. What you learn from all of this is, it's not important that your children do the doing. It's more important that children identify EFS as the place they're going to go and ask EFS to do it. And in turn, they're going to fund EFS so EFS has the ability to do it. That is a huge connection that must be made in our society.
Rajiv, thank you very much. You've given us marching directions here and informed us greatly. Will you have the opportunity to stick around if people have some questions afterward?
Oh, absolutely. As long as you give me an autograph, I'll do that. Thank you.
It's not worth much, but I'll be happy to. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You bet.